Chapter 3 Heart of Thunder. Machiko crouched, holding her blade steady, waiting for the first move of her opponent. For a moment, the samurai warrior, in full medieval regalia, was just as motionless. His own long blade gleamed in the late afternoon sun like a slender medallion of death, pendant from an azure sky. The samurai warrior stepped forward, pleated armor a jangle off an obviously immaculate build. She fancied she smelled the musky competence wafting off him. She tasted a backbeat of fear. He moved again, and he stepped forward with a familiar and startling arrogance. He seemed in a hurry, as though he wanted to finish up this particular butcher's order of slice and dice and move on to the next bit of delicatessen fun. "Hey," she called in Japanese. "Are you holding a salami in that codpiece, you miserable, impotent coward?" The eyes shot open with fury. The samurai raised his sword and, screaming, ran forward. Machiko Noguchi feinted to meet him headlong, then, at the last possible moment, stepped aside. She flicked her sword down, then up and under the skillful but infuriated blow, and its blade slammed up the vulnerable break in the armor, cutting into the man's body. The man's face grimaced a suitable expression of pain and surprise, and his mouth opened to let out a howl of extreme anguish. Machiko's sword whipped through shimmering light, coming out on the other side at full speed. The man disappeared in a snap. Machiko had to control the sword. She deflected its passage so that it whacked down onto the sod. She took a breath and steadied her nerves. "Excellent," piped a voice behind her. "Absolutely excellent, Machiko." She turned and looked at the speaker. There he was, beside that rock, crouching down so as to be out of the scenario that he had so ably created. The hollow tube was already retracting into its compartment in his forehead. "Thanks," she said. She suppressed a smile. It would not be advisable to give old A the H too much encouragement. He stood up, dusting off his khaki knees, straightening his immaculate bush jacket just so. "You've utilized the Sun Tzu's principles very well," pronounced the android in a clipped, punctilious tone that had an old-time mid-Atlantic quality to it. "Pardon me?" "Sun Tzu, the art of war, of course." "Oh yes, I thought you were talking about some kind of disease-carrying fly." "That, I believe, is the Seisei." Yes, along with many other fine principles, Attila. You reiterate them to me constantly. I don't necessarily have to be able to cough up whole sentences at the drop of a nunchuck. At some point, however, it all gets assimilated into my subconscious. It looked like a pretty obvious opening, though. You made the samurai display the flaw of pride and anger. I'm well acquainted with those flaws, and I know how to use that weakness in others. It's a common trait, I believe, in men, and I travelled a while with if not supermen, then at least exaggerated men. Attila looked a little troubled. "I wouldn't know. I don't have a subconscious. Perhaps I should save my money and buy one someday." They were about 3 kilometers out in the plains of Machiko Noguchi's work world. It was the corporation's bureaucratic equivalent of Saturday, and Machiko used the day in her usual fashion. Exercises. Fighting exercises with Attila the Hun, her robot, to be precise. Keep the body trim. Keep the soul sleek. Keep the old noodle alive. That was the ticket. Even when she'd been assigned out here in Zerosville, she realized that she was going to have some kind of trainer, some kind of companion, and since she wasn't quite certain of the human availability in these departments out here in the hinterworlds, she'd brought herself a robot. Well, android was the proper term, really, but as far as she was concerned, Attila was a robot. He'd been a number when she bought him, and she'd renamed him. It wasn't often that a private citizen was able to afford the expense, and she'd had to get the company's approval. However, she'd explained in no uncertain terms what she'd needed the thing for, and since the company was quite aware of her past and wanted to placate her as much as to get this loose cannon off their main deck, they'd complied. She had the money, and if she wanted to use it on a fabricated companion, well, what difference did it make if she used it to fight or to fornicate with? Attila the Hun was not the normal android used by the corporation. He was not an artificial person in the usual semi-organic sense, but rather a more mechanical sort. His strata of models was created to be affordable to the average populace and used for commercial or private reasons rather than military or space exploration. She programmed Attila to her specifications. Unfortunately, she didn't know quite what to do with the personality that came along with the whole package. "A beautiful day, Miss Noguchi, is it not?" said Attila, casting a smile across the plains. Machiko grunted. "Not feeling particularly articulate today?" "I just get really annoyed when you call me Miss, damn it." "You're not married." "Look, we've gone over this 100 times before. I wasn't aware that I hadn't had your previous programs erased, okay? I didn't realize that you had such a complex background. I realize that I can't erase the now without erasing you in toto. Can't you try to selectively erase habits, like calling me Miss?" "Certainly." "Well, do it." "You're not in a very good mood today, are you, Miss Noguchi?" "Machiko, please, just call me Machiko." "Oh, excellent. I enjoy our informal exchanges. It's nice to relate to you when you unleash me from the closet to do your will with me." "Right, like you haven't got a life." "My life is to serve." "And to watch your tapes and catalogue your music?" "One has to fill the spare moments." "I should have you programmed to clean and cook. That's what I should have done." "I do my share." "You can boil water and that's about it." "You forget that although I have senses, they have to be calibrated to the proper specifications to cook to your taste. Also, I would clean more if your odd meditation exercises did not call for such Spartan quarters, and your regimen did not call for cleaning it yourself as part of your kata." Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I'm just in a bitchy mood. Maybe defeating holographic opponents isn't quite as satisfying as the thunk of real flesh, the splash of real blood. "I'm sorry. I'm not equipped with those sorts of simulations. Again, you attempt to make me feel inferior." "Nothing of the sort." Attila suddenly smiled, and it was a revelation. Usually when in repose that face was dark and dour, with a dark complexion, dark eyes, a natural frown, and a sharp perfect nose, set in a thin face, topped with a perfect short gentleman's haircut. Attila looked more like a mopey Neapolitan young man than a Germanic Hun. However, when he smiled, showing perfectly shaped white teeth, the entire face seemed to light up in a different dimension. Moments like this made Machiko forget entirely that he wasn't a human being. Moments like this also made her remember that she was a human being. She'd always prided herself on her cool, her control. Her glacial characteristics had caused associates to dub her Ice Princess or Snow Queen. She had very few friends. Her pride in life was remaining tough, cool, and efficient. She had changed somewhat after her experience with the Yautja. True, she had been more comfortable in some ways with creatures who had rules of behaviour among them, and who generally obeyed those rules. However, they were alien, and she was human. Her experience on Gordian made her realise that she had a deep instinctual love for, and loyalty to, humanity. She respected the Yautja. In many ways she had become one of them, but she had discovered that she would have to do so in human terms, and so was now trying to explore different dimensions of her humanity. This did not mean that she could deal with other people that well. However, she was trying. One of the best parts of being with Attila was that she felt comfortable with him, and could be playful or bitchy, cold or charming, and experiment with emerging aspects of her personality. "Oh good," said Attila. "Then you'll snap out of your funk and agree with me that it is a beautiful day. I mean, all the evidence is here before you." Machiko looked around. The scent of her own exercise had dissipated somewhat, so she was able to notice the smells around her. Prominent, of course, was the grass. Not earth-type grass, but on the same principle, short and green, and cast over everything like a luxuriant rug. It was this area's version of summer here, pleasantly warm, just as the area's version of winter was pleasantly cold. In between were the long, long autumn and spring, king and queen of this world of the bland and the mild. Flowers. That was what Attila was talking about, of course. The floral addition was truly pleasant, and combined with the odd shadings of colour combed into the surroundings, poking out of unexpected spots in others, and magentas and bright slashes of camellia. That, along with the uncommon blue-green of the sky, the way the cumulus clouds navigated the vasty, silent reaches of it, and out beyond the reaches and humps of hills and flats, the faint suggestion of mountain peaks. A slight, fragrant breeze ruffled Machiko's still short black hair, cooled the still hot bloody mark on her forehead, that after-image of lightning. "Nice." "Nice?" The robot's eyebrows rose with surprise. "Merely Nice. Where are your aesthetics? She shrugged. It has a kind of unruly, boring attractiveness, I suppose. You forget my background, though. A curious cock of the head. A finger lifted in understanding. Ah, yes. As Japanese, you must prefer the more regulated and disciplined beauty of a garden. I'm not saying I don't enjoy wild beauty. I learned to thrill at the waste of Ryushi, the violent dawns, the harsh sunsets. Perhaps your opinion is presently reflected by your state of mind. Oh? You are not a content individual? Oh, right. And you are? The robot shrugged. As an android, I am merely content to be an individual. Freedom in bondage, eh? I do not consider my service with you as bondage, though I suppose legally and technically it might be considered so. Oh, for emancipation. Let my people go. Attila's face assumed a rather hurt expression. Perhaps we should continue our exercises. Machiko took out a scarf and wiped away a residue of sweat from her exertions. I think I want to break for lunch. Maybe we can do some war manoeuvres later this afternoon. Attila shot an arm forward and made a show of scrutinizing his wristwatch. I believe I can fit you into my schedule. Well, how thoughtful of you. There's a nice bistro in town I thought we could go to. Well, since there's only one bistro in town, I believe I know the one of which you speak. It's a shame you didn't bring a picnic lunch. We could have lingered and enjoyed the day. He slapped his chin with exaggerated revelation. But oh my, how could I have forgotten? Attila fairly skipped over to the omni-terrain vehicle, opened the trunk, and pulled out a basket, covered with a red and white check towel. He whipped this off to reveal sandwiches, apples, and a bottle of red wine. Machiko gave a grudging smile. I didn't realize you were programmed to be thoughtful. All androids have areas of latitude within which to move. It's the areas of longitude that trouble me. Attila sniffed with fake huffiness. Perhaps you should just partake, enjoy, and then criticize if the fare does not meet your high standards. She laughed. Come on, Attila. You're just trying to cheer me up. She followed him over to the boulder, where he motioned to a place where they could sit. Yes, I confess, and with good reason. Life is so much more pleasant when you're in a reasonable mood. He began to unpack the basket and place the meal on the table like rock. He lifted a small vase, complete with diamond-petalled flower, and made it the centerpiece for this sumptuous display. There. To your liking? She nodded. A pleasant surprise. There is more to existence than the art of war. That's nice to know. What kind of sandwich is this? She began to unwrap the cellophane. Taste it. Guess. I hope this isn't some kind of new martial arts exercise. What, sandwich karate? Complete with the movement of lettuce and mustard? And the pickle on the sidekick? Hardly. May I suggest that you taste it? She did. From one look at the contents between the rye slices, she was able to guess that it was some kind of meat pâté, and the colour was liverish, but surely not. She bit into it, and her eyes lit up. Foie gras? The genuine article. But where? Oh, a little barter with the gentle people in shipping and handling. I thought it would go well with a picnic, and you seemed so down in the dumps lately. She took a bite of the delicious fatty pâté, and then just let it linger meltingly in her mouth. She closed her eyes and savoured it. Can you blame me? She said finally. I had thought that you were happy when you were dating that mining foreman. Who, Edward? That was a laugh. Just a diversion. It's all pretty bland now, Till. It's all anti-climax. Hardly a very positive attitude. Surely those predator sorts didn't have foie gras sandwiches. No, they ate their liver raw. Surely they didn't have clever and valuable android assistants. No, and they didn't have robot slaves either. They were quite resourceful, those fellows. Sounds like they ate honour and valour for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Oh no, there's a biological reason for their interest in hunting. They're quite carnivorous. You can pretty much tell by their breath. What a lovely bunch. And you say you actually miss them? Miss them? I wouldn't go so far as that, Till. They're not exactly the lovable sort. No, they hardly inspire much sentiment. She sighed and thought of a different way of putting her feelings. It pretty much came out exactly the way it came out before. I felt alive then. You're alive now. You want me to engage my diagnostic functions? He grabbed her wrist. Ah, a pulse. A very good sign. Sorry, I felt fully alive, fully in the now of existence. Attila shrugged. Dangerous sportsters report the same kind of rush. It's all the human body's internal drug system. I'm told that they have some nice rushes on the black market as well? No, you just don't understand. He nodded. No, perhaps I do. Perhaps, with all this proving of your mettle, your own honour and valour, in this society of hyper-macho creatures, you were able to somehow momentarily blot out the shame and guilt that rests so heavily upon your family's name because of what your father did, and what that means in the culture that you cling so stubbornly to. I hate it when you get like this. Get like what? What? Did I buy a sight bot, for God's sake? What kind of bullshit are you handing me? She got up, red-faced, and threw the half-eaten sandwich at him. Attila flinched. Simply pointing out things we've already discussed. She was immediately sorry. She realised the reason why they didn't call these robots anymore. Robots didn't have feelings. Androids did. And though perhaps those feelings weren't as screwy and cantankerous as human feelings tended to be, they deserved respect and consideration. I apologise, Attila. She went over and picked up the sandwich, biting into it as though she were eating the words she'd previously spoken. A delicate area. She brushed some dirt and grass from the sandwich and took a large bite, masticating with emphasis. Lovely. Attila the Hun folded his arms. Perhaps I refused to be tricked in such an obvious way. Oh, won't you forgive me? I was never upset. What's to forgive? Oh, now who's dissembling? I find our course of conversation extremely unproductive, and will now resume my role as your trustworthy, faithful, and silent robot servant. In other words, you're going to sulk. Precisely. Well, before you do that, maybe I can have your input on what I'm presently looking at over there. She directed her finger skyward. Attila swiveled his head, responding immediately to the seriousness of her tone. The spaceport lay to the west of the makeshift town. They had driven immediately south. Coming down on incandescent impellers was a starship, flashing its own exhaust, and an exultant sun at its zenith. A moment. There was a click and hum as Attila's oculars focused on the object and made the appropriate telescopic adjustment. Attila had shown her some of the mechanical aspects of his composition, all truly impressive. Hidden compartments, perhaps even hidden weapons. He even claimed that portions of his body could operate independently of one another, by remote control. At his more exasperating moments, Machiko sometimes felt like testing this out with her sword. Well, impatience is not the virtue of a warrior. My humanity is leaking, so spill. Your metaphors are mixed. Come on! It's a most curious spaceship, Machiko Noguchi. Some kind of KX model. KX models? She whistled. Those are exclusively yachts. Indeed. Why would anyone who owns a KX want to come to this godforsaken planet? Wondered Machiko Noguchi.